Welcome to Java Programming Episode 2, presented by modcrafter.com. Today's topic will be variables. The difficulty is beginner, and prerequisites, if you missed the first episode, is the knowledge of what is a main class. And you can check out that video in the description below or click on the annotation on screen. So let's get started. Alrighty, so before we get started with today's lesson, let me give you guys a brief introduction to variables. Variables are used to store data and computational results in a program. Variable names should be descriptive and represent the value or data being used, and declaring a variable tells the compiler what type of data it represents. So let me go over what I just said. Variables are used to store data. Basically what that means is, let's say you take a value, let's call it the number 9, and store that in a variable. You're basically using that variable as a placeholder and will be using that value 9 somewhere later on in your program. Whether it be using it as a math computation for adding numbers together or doing other something with math, or maybe you display that value to the user. Either way, a variable is useful for holding a value and then using that value somewhere later on in your program. Now, variable names should be descriptive and represent the value or data being used. So basically what that means is that you should name your variables. They should be representative of whatever you're doing. So if you're calculating a math problem between two numbers, you don't want to call your variable myCamel. You know, that just doesn't make sense at all. myCamel does not make a descriptive name for calculating two numbers together. So another example would be if you're doing a area of a circle, which we'll be doing later, call your variable radius or area or calculation. Those are descriptive names for whatever you're doing, and in this case, calculating the area of a circle, which we'll do in just a minute. Finally, declaring a variable tells the compiler what type of data it represents. So there are things called data types, and those data types are used to tell the compiler, which is used to communicate between your code and the computer, which runs your code, and then spits everything back out to you. The data types are used to declare what type of value is being stored. So there's different data types like integers, which are whole numbers, which you've learned in math class, that are positive and negative. And you have doubles, characters, bytes, short, long, float, and boolean. Those are just different ways to represent different values. In this video, I'm going to show you integers and doubles. So to declare a integer, what you can do, here's the syntax. The syntax is basically the code of what you program. So to declare an integer, you first declare the integer data type, which is just int, and then you give it a name. So I'm going to say my number equals 2. So I'm giving the value 2 to the variable name my number, which is of type int. Another way to declare multiple integers at the same time would be to say int your number, comma, and then another number equals 3 with a semicolon. And then another way to declare variables would be to say int number equals 2, and then whatever, I'm just trying to think, second number equals 4. So there's a couple of different ways to declare variables. Let's look at the value for each of those. So I'm going to just output those. I want to say my number, and then say plus my number. And then I'm just going to copy this a couple of different times, 4 more times. Copy 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you'll see something interesting here in just a second. Copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. Now you can see we're throwing an error here. It says variable your number might not have been initialized. So what we're saying here is int your number. It doesn't have a value to it. All the other numbers here have a value in that variable. So we need to set a value for your number. I'm just going to set that down here as your number equals 9. So now we have a value equal to your number. And you can see we've set that value outside of declaring it as an int up here. So there's another way you can declare the variables. Let's just run this real quick and you'll see the output. my number is 2, which is we have declared up here. My number, the next one, which I should have renamed these, but you can see your number is the next one, which is 9. Next one is another number, which is 3, which is correct. Number is 2, which is correct. And then second number, which is 4, is correct as well. So those are just a couple of different ways that you can declare variables. To declare a double type variable, what you can do is just say double variable equals 2.0. So you can see the difference between an integer and a double is that the double variable type, int variable, has decimal points after the end of it. So those are the difference between a double and an integer. So let's do something a little bit more complicated here. Let's do the circle or area of a circle example. So I'm going to say radius equals 3. I'll say double area. Now I'm not going to declare a value for the area variable here, but you'll see what I'm going to do in just a second. I'll say area equals radius times 3.14159. Then what I'm going to do is just output that and say calculation is area. So you can see we have a double variable declared up here, and then we set the value for that in this calculation, radius times 3.14159. So let's run this. Let's see, we get our number for our area of our circle is 28.27431. So you can see we have this value 3.14159. Now, if you were doing this calculation like in different places in your program, you wouldn't want to keep typing out 3.14159 every time you wanted to calculate the value or add in the value of now. When you run it, we'll get that 2.5 in our calculation here. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're doing calculation between a couple of different types of data types, in this case integers and doubles. There's some loss of precision if you're doing division with integers, so just keep that in mind. So you want to use like doubles for division. It obviously makes sense because you'll get that precision out to 1 decimal point here. So that's all I have to show you guys for today's tutorial. It's quick and easy to show you guys what are variables. You'll be using variables a lot in programming, so get used to declaring these. Find a way that's comfortable to you to declare variables, whether it be the single line declaring variables all on one line or declaring it on multiple lines. It's totally up to you. Next time, what we're going to look into, I'm going to show you what the string data type is, and we're also going to be working with user input and output via the console output down here. We're going to communicate with our program through the use of what's called scanner input from the keyboard and scanner output, I believe, from the keyboard as well, and displaying those values down here as strings in the output of the console. So I hope you guys check out that video sometime next week probably, and until then, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you all next time.